Welcome to this podcast, a role of trade agreements and trade associations in fostering cross-border business collaborations. I am Dr. Sriganesh Rao, member of a research team under the Maitri Grant program of DFAT Australia for developing a roadmap for Australia-India strategic collaboration on semiconductors. I have with me Mr. Gaven Standon, who is the president of Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce. Gavin is an experienced senior executive working across various facets of industry in the domains of IT, telecom, manufacturing, and shared services for large global organizations, including Hewlett Packard Enterprises, Jetsys IT Services, and Coca-Cola. So currently, he leads the partner ecosystem for Telstra in India. He is the president of the Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce, where he strives to bring collaboration between Australia and India across trade, investments, and business partnerships. Welcome, Gavin.
Thank you, Doctor.
So, Gavin, could you tell us about the historical trade between India and Australia and the estimated future trade?
Sure, thank you. And it's a very pertinent question because historically, the India Australia trade corridor has constantly evolved over a period of time. And if I really look at it over the last 2 years in particular, it has evolved from a largely commodity led relationship to a much more broader, multi sector, multi industry partnership. And if I re-emphasize the last 2 years in particular, the corridor has actually accelerated due to the India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, which you call as ECTA, which entered into force from the 29th of December 2022. But if I really have to double click into this on two counts, first one, merchandise trade step change is primarily driven by the India's Ministry of Commerce that noted any bilateral merchandise trade between these two countries has been tracking according to plan. But I really give the numbers. For example, in 2020 to 2021, it clocked somewhere around 12.2 USD. In 2022-2023, went up to about 26 billion, moderated at about $24 billion in 2024, primarily because of the commodity price normalization we saw across the world. And if I take the second part of it, the future ambition, both governments have publicly aligned to build the trade ambition of around $100 billion by 2030, building on ECTA and the ongoing CECA negotiations that are currently underway. So my point of view is the future trade trajectory will be driven by critical minerals and clean energy supply chains, the education and the skills sector, technology and the services export, agribusiness and food, advanced manufacturing, deep tech, and the likes. And with CECA expected to broaden coverage beyond the early harvest of ECTA, this is going to bring in a lot of downfall. I mean, a lot of windfalls for the country. These are also called the four super highways of trade, and we are significantly betting on this front.
Oh, it's exciting. Uh, what's the background of the Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce?
Good question, Doctor. If I really look at AustCham, which in its full is called the Indo-Australian Chambers of Commerce, it was established in 1989. It was one of the first bilateral trade chambers that was set up with the intent to promote and strengthen bilateral trade between India and Australia, primarily driven by trade and investment. It was formally inaugurated on the 22nd of June 1989, to be very precise, by the then Australian High Commissioner to India. Today, it is pretty much a national body. Though our secretariat is based out of Chennai, it represents a broad base of members, almost to a count of 350 as we count now. This is a combination of large enterprise, MSMEs, a lot of individual alumni, which primarily drives three things. First one is advocacy for the industry. Second one is market access for our industry members. And last but not the least, partnerships to drive practices and influencing policies that can help industry.
Okay. So what has been the role of the chamber in actually facilitating and encouraging cross-border businesses?
Good one. So if I really look at it from my point of view, AustCham or IACC's role is to reduce friction and increase trust in cross-border decision making. It does a few very practical things in my opinion. First one is market access and navigation. It provides the corridor intelligence, some of the demand signals that come from a regulatory standpoint, sector opportunities, very credible introductions when it comes to business matching, and very important, making sure that the ground and reality context is really boiled up to the industry. Second one, I would call this as a convening power. This is creating structured engagements, for example, roundtables, delegate visits, trade and business delegations, policy dialogues, primarily to move from interest to transactions. If not, everything ends up being just an inquiry, but we would like to really translate that into transactions. The third one, what I really call, and this is the most important and the most formidable one, is advocacy and representation, which means acting as a bridge between government, between institutions, between businesses on issues that matter to the business, to make sure that we break down market barriers, improve our compliance to standards of business procedures and processes, making sure there's a practical framework of making sure that the feedback really goes back to the right level of institutions. We have a very, very strong B2G connect, I must say, which is today, when I really look at the executive sponsor of the chambers, it happens to be the High Commissioner of Australia and India. And under his stewardship, it's always a pleasure to really make sure that we leverage this relationship in making sure we improve the ease of doing business. A very visible example is over the years, we have explicitly designed to enable B2B, B2G meetings, market briefings, and partnership building that really is a part of the ethos of this chamber.
Okay, so you also have, partnership with the associations in Australia also.
Yes, we do. We have recently signed a expression of interest with a couple of the consortiums we do have in Australia. But I must say, at the end of it, it's all about the industry's sentiment and their industry's comfort in how they want to really proceed and how they want to engage. Because at the end of it, our key objective is improving ease of doing business, and that's where it lands.
Okay. Say to encourage cross-border businesses and investments between countries, it is very important to look at the considerations of like tariff, IP protection, dispute resolutions, etc. How are these normally handled between countries?
Yeah, in practice, these are handled through a very layered architecture. I must say, there is a very, very strong governance and dispute management structure. Let us take the first point that you just mentioned, which is tariffs. And for example, tariffs and customs, they pretty much go hand in hand. If I look at the Economic Comprehensive Trade Agreement, or ECTA, it contains a trade in goods commitment that has been made, a very, very strong and predetermined tariff schedule, and an operational chapter on how custom procedures, trade facilitation, and rules of origin need to be defined. Very clearly, SPS, TBT measures are being very clearly defined in that part. And if I need to really emphasize this, Australia's DFAT summarizes outcomes such as 100% of imports from India into Australia are tariff free. That's a very, very big step. And a very significant share of Australian exports to India are tariff free also. It really reduces under very staged commitments over a period of time. So, from a tariff and custom standpoint, this is what I can say. Second one, when you spoke about IP protection, that is a big one, because ECTA, and I have to preface this, the trade agreement between Australia and India is one of the most comprehensive one that I've ever seen across many other countries. And if I really need to really, talk about IP protection, ECTA has gone in with a very structured way to liberalize goods and services quickly, and contains the institutional mechanisms to manage implementation and disputes. Because when you look at IP protection, in a cross-border commerce, they are typically addressed through a country's domestic IP laws. So when you really look at it this way, the treaty commitments and the broader seeker agenda is parties can expand coverage as negotiations proceeds. But the important piece is how do you really curtail and manage them. So this comes to the other point, which is dispute management or dispute resolution. ECTA includes a very dedicated dispute settlement procedure. It has a chapter on it. We call it as a state-to-state dispute settlement chapter. It defines consultation procedures. It defines the escalation pathways. And if I really have to sum up all these three, businesses care less about legal theory and more about predictability. They need very clear tariff schedules. They want to make sure that it is enforceable based on the rules of origin, and a very credible escalation path if issues arise. Because at the end of it, we are still living in a very global world. It's not that there's only one comparison that we have between India and Australia. We do compare multiple other trade procedures that we have across various other countries, and hence that becomes a very good benchmark.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned about how ECTA handles IP protection, tariff, and dispute resolution. What are the other focus areas of ECTA?
Oh, good. Okay, so that I mean, I can really talk to the cows come home on that, but let me speak a little more in detail or give you a very summarized view. ACTA, which is the Indo-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, it is an agreement that entered in due course over the December 2022 timeframe, and is often described as an early harvest pathway to a much more fuller seeker, which is something that we are vividly looking forward to. The focus areas from an official standpoint would be under this. First one is tariff commitments when it comes to trade in goods. Second one is very clearly the rules of origin, both from a product standpoint as well as service standpoint. The other part, the third one would be customs procedures and trade facilitation, how it has been managed, how it is being facilitated, and most importantly, how what impact it has on trade. Sorry. The other one is on standards of conformity, specifically in the pharma side, which is SPS and TBT measures. We do look at trade in services, like, for example, annexures to financial services, telecom, professional services, and the likes. We do look at temporary movement of natural people, which is basically mobility in its true sense. We call that skill mobility. Institutional provisions, dispute management, dispute settlement, and last but not the least, making sure that we have side letters on topic, including post-study work visas, work and holiday visas that are managed part of this. So it's a whole lot of these focus areas. I can't say that just a couple of them. This pretty much drives three things. One is ease of doing business. Second one is clarity of trade. Third one is mobility of skills and capabilities.
Okay. Okay. So I'm talking about the mobility. So talent mobility is very, very important for cross-border businesses, which are, for the success of this of the business. So how is ECTA enabling the talent mobility? That is, say, for example, easy movement of business officials, so entrepreneurs, engineers, researchers, and students between the two countries.
Good that that's a great segue from the previous question, doctor. And if I really look at it, there are three parts to it. First is the government to government interaction, right? So ACTA has created an institutional mechanism and a framework along with schedules that requires ongoing coordination and implementation committees between the two countries. It helps to
Mhm.
derive customs cooperation, continuous alignment to seeker, and making sure that the negotiations advance in a very methodical manner. The second one is the business to business agreements. Reduced tariff, clear rules of origin, very clear services portfolio which drives services access, reduce transaction costs, reduce friction, and very important, improve confidence for investment and supply chain decisions. That is the second part. Third, which is your primary question, how does it help people to people mobility?
Right.
ACTA's side letters and mobility architecture are very explicitly supported by post study work settings and a work and holiday pathway, both of which deepen long term linkages between talent pools and employers. But you need to understand a lot of people to people mobility is also dependent on the persona, the personality, because that's something that you can't generalize. You can create platforms, you can create pathways, but at the end of it, it's sometimes the personality that really drives some of these decisions.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. So ECTA also supports any joint research and development between Australia and Indian universities.
They do. I mean, when I really look at a couple of some fantastic collabs as well as memorandums of understanding, I can see, Queensland University that is signed up with Delhi University, Monash has signed up with IIT Bombay.
Mhm.
We've got a lot of other collabs that are happening as we talk now. We have University of New South Wales, University of Western Australia, and the likes signing two sets of agreements. One is technology sharing and best practice sharing on those fronts. Second one is associated degrees that can really be driven out of these collabs to make sure post study experience as well as study experiences cross national boundaries between India and Australia. So transnational education in its true sense is very very powerful on this front.
Okay. You also mentioned about a term SICA for the
Yes.
Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement. So, what exactly is SICA? How does it differ from ECTA, or is it that it takes ECTA further?
Yes, SECA, to be honest, which we call is a comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, is a next stage beyond ECTA. It is much more ambitious. Under the negotiations that is currently being held, it is designed to build upon ECTA. As I said, it is a step up to ECTA and expands coverage and depth. Because today, when you really look at it, the way DFAT, which is Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade Australia, notes is SECA negotiations were probably launched pretty much around the 2011 to 2011 time frame. It has been discussed for a
Okay.
very, very, very long time. It has been built on very strong foundations. These are not desktop exercises. These are actually lived experiences. And with ACTA, that has also come in between. It has helped activate a lot of those conversations. The India's Ministry of Commerce has also noted that SECA progress through multiple rounds and continued engagement is very, very vital because, at my point of view, SECA is where we can expect deeper outcomes, especially on services, digital trade, and regulatory cooperation. Because this is more around the new growth sectors, making the corridors more system integrated and not just tariff optimized. Because tariff is great when it comes to look and feel and touching products. When it comes to Seeker, it will have a much more wider digital architecture, or what I call is a business architecture of sorts.
Okay. So ECTA would be the foundation for the SECA. Would that
Yes,
be right?
that's correct.
Okay. And apart from this, are there any other focus area of SECA?
Oh, yes. I mean, as I said, Seeker is very, very comprehensive. I don't think I'll do justice to it, and I'm not really the expert to talk through
Okay.
it. But from an industry standpoint, Seeker is framed as a building on ECTA outcomes and expanding the relationships across higher ambitions, making sure that the sectors and rules for the next gen businesses are set. The DFAT lists significant opportunity areas, including education, agriculture, energy resources, tourism, healthcare, financial services, infrastructure, science and innovation, and I can go on and on. But in,
Wow.
in public reporting on negotiations, seeker discussions have covered a very, very wide range in areas,
Mhm.
especially around goods and services, mobility, digital trade, rules of origin, and legal and institutional provisions, and with additional tracks which has been referenced as negotiations as they evolve over a period of time. So I'm not surprised that Seeker is something that we are seriously looking forward to landing where we have to land.
Wow. I think it is going to be truly comprehensive.
It
Yeah.
is.
See, currently, India has embarked on a domestic semiconductor journey through its
Correct.
flagship program called India Semiconductor Mission.
Correct.
This opens up a new avenue for collaboration with Australia and India in the areas of critical minerals and semiconductors. Does ECTA and SICA address this area?
Yes, particularly through the critical minerals pathway, which
Okay.
is directly relevant to semiconductors and advanced manufacturing supply chains. ACTA has very explicitly stated how it improves access to critical minerals and resources trade by eliminating and reducing duties on key products and supporting growth and investment. So in Australia today, critical mineral sector is very strategically aligned to India's manufacturing ambitions. Austrade in particular also highlights that the AI Australia India ECTA has removed tariffs for most Australian critical minerals and improved India's access to these inputs. Very importantly, if you look at the electronics and the clean energy sector, along with advanced manufacturing supply chains, this plays a huge role. So, how does this, really make a very big difference? At my level, I clearly see ICTA helps establish the economic plumbing.
Mhm.
SECA is a platform to industrialize collaboration, and pairing it with Australia's strengths in critical minerals and resources and with research, India's scale in manufacturing, design, talent, and semiconductor missions led demand will be something that will be of the envy to the world.
Great. So, Gavin, any final thoughts on how IACC can facilitate the opportunities which are provided by ECTA and SICA?
Oh yes, Dr. Sriganesh, there are a lot of it, right? I mean, when I say a lot, it's just not about looking at what I can do within the framework of Sika and Ekta, but also how do we constantly make sure that the feedback mechanism and the feed forward mechanism for both these agreements constantly go to the institutions that really are designing and making these policies, because it's very important that the sentiment of the industry is really heard. That's point number one. Point number two, as I said, India is a global player. You have interactions happening across the globe, across various other industries, across various other industries located in different countries. And when you compare and contrast practices, industries, business policies, and business practices and processes with various other countries, you would like to see that you get the best outcome with an India Australia lens. So, from a chamber standpoint, it's just not about just following the rules and regulations that are set out there, because that's table stakes. But if I really have to push the boundaries, I would really like to see industry going back to the institutions and improving the ease of doing business, because ease of doing business is not the prerogative. I won't use the word prerogative, but it is, I don't think, is the only prerogative of institutions that are making these policies. It's a prerogative of industries to make sure that they set the pathway to ease business in India and Australia going towards the next set of years.
Yeah, I think that'll be exciting. So,
Yeah,
Gavin, thank you for your thoughts on this very important subject, and it has been great having you with us on this podcast. So, thank you once again.
pleasure was mine, and thanks for the opportunity, Dr. Sriganesh.
Thank you.